A woman weighing over 150 kilograms sat on her 40-kilogram son. This was the way the lady wanted to punish the child, despite the boy's screams and pleas to stop. The mother sat on her son like that for about 7 minutes and only got up after she realized that her son had lost consciousness. Dear, this story is really unusual, I would say, but it's truly creepy. So make yourself comfortable if you can, because this is scary. On April 25, 2024, the Porter County Sheriff's Office in Indiana received information about 10-year-old Dakota Levi Stevens, who was in need of urgent medical assistance. When the medics and law enforcement arrived at the scene, the boy was lying unconscious on the ground near the house. They immediately began performing cardiopulmonary resuscitation on him. But later, it turned out that Levi was not breathing and had no pulse. In addition, law enforcement officers noticed marks on his neck and chest area. Then it was decided to urgently take the child to the local hospital. Soon he was transported by helicopter to another medical facility, where Levi was connected to life support equipment. The situation was extremely difficult, and despite all the doctor's efforts, on April 27, 2 days after the incident, let's say, the child passed away. The results of the autopsy conducted later showed that the cause of Levi's death was severe brain swelling, which in turn was caused by prolonged lack of oxygen. In addition, the boy was found to have severe damage to his internal organs, particularly the liver and lungs, which are vital organs. At that time, the circumstances under which Levi sustained all these injuries were not disclosed in the media. But just a few months after the child's death, it became known that his adoptive mother, 48-year-old Jennifer Lee Wilson, whom you can see on your screens now, was arrested on suspicion of murdering her son. From that moment on, more and more details of this horrific case began to gradually leak into the press. So, in general, I will tell you about them. However, to better understand this story, it's worth starting with Levi's biography and telling how he ended up in the family of his future killer, Rojdako and Levi. Stevens was born in Indiana in 2014. His biological parents were addicted to drugs. I apologize, as always, for the censorship of the kittens, and they couldn't properly take care of the boy and his sister. Despite this, Levi lived with them until his father died from blood poisoning. After that, the children's mother gave them to her sister, Annie Parrish Parker, to raise them. A year later, the Department of Child Services took Levi and his sister from their aunt to place them in foster care. Later, the aunt managed to officially adopt Levi's sister, but she was unable to gain full custody of the boy. According to this lady, this happened because she objected to her sister's children attending additional therapy sessions. The woman didn't like this idea because at that time Levi and his sister were already overwhelmed at school, and their aunt was afraid that with additional psychotherapy sessions, the children would simply be left without a childhood. However, the Department of Child Services did not agree with the woman, and Levi was removed from her care. From that moment on, the boy began to be moved from one family to another, over and over again. Over the next 5 years, he lived temporarily with several families. One of the families he stayed with from 2019 to 2021 really wanted to adopt him permanently, but they were never able to do so. In short, that's how Levi changed families. And on April 5, 2024, less than a month before his death, he ended up with the family of Jennifer Lee Wilson. At that time, the woman was already raising 3 children, all of whom were adopted. What kind of relationship existed between Levi and his new family during their time together is unknown to me, and in fact is generally unknown. However, that same Jennifer would later claim that her adopted son repeatedly showed verbal and physical aggression towards others. Here is this child. According to the woman, on April 25, 2024, Levi was very, hyperactive from the very morning. He, along with other children and Jennifer, was playing shooting games with toy guns. The woman told the children to stop playing and instead asked them to do some chores, promising that after that they could continue their games. Little Levi didn't like these conditions. He refused and got angry at his mother, after which he simply ran away from home. The boy had never run away before, and Jennifer didn't know how to react to such behavior. However, she still decided that her son would cool off and come back on his own soon. However, Levi still didn't come back, and eventually the woman went to look for him. Meanwhile, the family's neighbor said that after running away from his mother, Levi ran into her yard and shocked her with his request. The boy asked the woman to adopt him. He explained that his adoptive parents beat him and forbid him from contacting the social worker who is supposed to monitor the child's well-being in the new family. In addition, the child asked the neighbor to call the police. According to the woman, at that moment she did not notice any visible bodily injuries on Levi. But around the same time, Jennifer, who was looking for her son, saw him talking to the neighbor. She drove up to them in her car, and when she found out that the neighbor was planning to call the police, she asked her not to interfere and to mind her own business. Well, you understand what tone that was said in. After that, Jennifer managed to persuade Levi to get into the car, and they went home together. When they approached the house, the boy started yelling at his foster mom and said he was leaving home again, so Jennifer tried to stop him. There were no witnesses to this incident, and the woman herself claims that she is not sure whether she intentionally knocked her son down or if they just fell to the ground together at some point. Either way, the boy ended up pinned to the ground and his mother was lying across his body. Let me remind you that at that time, the woman weighed 154 kilograms while Levi was almost 3 times lighter. When the woman lay down on the boy, he started screaming, but Jennifer didn't react to it. Instead, she called the social worker via FaceTime, who didn't stop the woman but tried to calm her down with words, though not the boy. Despite all her efforts, he kept screaming and waving his arms. I'm no expert, but it seemed Levi was screaming so loudly then that most people would have understood immediately. They should have understood that he was doing it out of pain, not because he wanted to run away from his mother or just get attention. At that moment, he was being killed. Nevertheless, neither Jennifer nor the social worker understood this. They thought the child was just throwing a tantrum. The woman Jennifer was talking to, finally realizing that the boy wouldn't calm down just because she simply asked the foster mother to call her back after she got home with her son and he had calmed down. Throughout this entire phone conversation, Jennifer kept lying on Levi. Then she even made her daily call to her husband and said something like, "Levi is having one of those days again." And only after finishing this conversation did the woman ask her son if he was ready to get up, but he was no longer responding. Jennifer decided that the child was pretending, so she asked him directly about it, but again there was no answer. And only then did the woman climb onto the bed, turn the boy over, and see his pale face and closed eyes. Jennifer immediately began performing cardiopulmonary resuscitation on her son and told her other children to call 911. However, as you already know, unfortunately, Levi could not be saved. Soon, during the investigation of this case, law enforcement officers seized footage from surveillance cameras in the area where the crime occurred. Although these videos were never made public, at one of the court hearings, prosecutors described the footage that the cameras captured on the day of Levi's death. In one of the videos, which lasts about 20 seconds, you can see a woman lying across Levi near his head while he is simply screaming. This continues throughout the entire recording. In the next video of the same duration, the boy is still screaming and crying, and in the third video, which lasts 6 minutes and 48 seconds, Levi is already silent and not moving at all. Meanwhile, on the recording, you can hear Jennifer say, "I was lying on him, he was misbehaving." Despite the fact that law enforcement quickly learned about the tragic circumstances of Levi's death, they did not rush to arrest his adoptive mother. After hearing about this, Indiana residents started holding rallies and demanding justice for Dakota Levi Stevenson. The first rally was in May 2024, followed by another in June. Despite the rather obvious public outrage, a warrant for Jennifer's arrest was issued only in July, but when law enforcement officers arrived at her house to arrest her, it turned out, to everyone's surprise, that she had disappeared. All 154 kilograms, but just days later, Jennifer was found. In the state of Michigan, surveillance cameras recorded her car, which allowed law enforcement officers to quickly detain her. On July 14, she was charged with involuntary manslaughter. Under this article, the maximum sentence Jennifer faced was 6 years in prison. It later turned out that just 3 days after her arrest, the woman's husband posted bail of only $20,000 and Jennifer was released. But in the meantime, protests continued, with people demanding that the district attorney consider additional charges against the woman, including child abuse and negligence. An online petition was started to have Jennifer's husband removed as the local middle school's principal. According to Indiana state law, as an educator, he was required to report child abuse that he had witnessed. But not only did he fail to do this, but while talking to his wife via video call at the moment she was suffocating their son with her body, he didn't even try to stop her. Just an ordinary conversation, an ordinary day, ordinary darling, we're killing children. Despite local residents' demands for the man to be punished at the school where he taught after learning about the petition, they reported that since no charges had been brought against Mr. Wilson by law enforcement, no one was planning to fire him from his job. He will continue to work. Jennifer Wilson herself, immediately after her arrest, refused to admit her guilt in Levi's death. However, a few months later, in October 2024, she did change her mind. When Ms. Wilson admitted her guilt, the court proceedings in the case began, which continued for several more months. At the hearing in January 2025, Jennifer Wilson heard her sentence. Before that, she addressed Levi's relatives, who were present in the courtroom, with these words, "I do not expect your forgiveness if we were in each other's place. I'm not sure that I could forgive the person responsible for my son's death. I'm very upset about the role I played in this terrible tragedy." After hearing this statement, Judge Michael Bergerson sentenced Jennifer Wilson to the maximum term allowed in her case, which was 6 years in prison. However, according to media reports, the woman will spend only 5 out of 6 years in prison, and then she will be released home and spend another year on probation. In addition, it is known that after Levi's death, the Indiana Department of Child Services removed Jennifer Wilson's 3 other foster children from her care. Well, darlings, that's a really creepy story if you ask me. Stay healthy, take care of your children, your family, and your loved ones. Basically, see you in the next video. Thank you.